Mark in the count. The swing arm now coming back as our countdown continues.
Peace. Welcome back to the Brick Something channel, and thank you for checking out today's Needless Ephemera We Saw, aka our news show. News! Get it? I just want to break down some of the cool things that I've seen recently, strike up a conversation. Hopefully you find something that interests you that maybe you didn't know about. Before we get started, would super appreciate it if you'd hit like on this video and would subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell just so you know when I drop these things. All right, let's get into it. So what ephemera are we going to check out today, folks? All right, let's take a look. First off, I've got a bunch of stuff in the sort of that's what's up news category. If you're a Mythic Legions fan like I am and into sci-fi even remotely, this first stuff I'm going to show you is going to blow your mind. Check this out. On the Four Horsemen Studios Instagram and on their YouTube channel, they've been sharing in-package shots of these figures. Here you've got Oleg Thygar in full packaging. I cleaned these images just a little bit so you can full on see the glory of this figure inside, not to mention the amazing Nate Barch artwork on the outside. Head to toe, the designs, the colors on these characters, it's everything I've been waiting for. My most anticipated figure of the line is Vorga. Think Vasquez from the Aliens movie, but orange. This thing is amazing. Head to toe, the body armor, the musculature, everything is just looking so damn good on this figure. And of course, we can't leave without checking out the Scions, those in charge of this prison station where this whole story takes place. You got the block commander and a prison guard. Man, these things not only hit sci-fi vibes, but it totally brings me back to one of my favorite toy lines, Sectars. Cosmic Legions is going to be wild. Moving on from that toy line, since we're in space, let's talk UFOs. Specifically, Bootsy Collins coming down from the Parliament mothership. Super 7 is hitting all my favorite musical notes. They've already done the punk stuff, they're hitting all sorts of hip-hop legends, and now we're going straight to the funk. Bootsy Collins with that amazing bass guitar. Straight up, I am not a reaction collector, but I'm just so happy that this thing exists. If you're so inclined, buy it so that maybe I can someday get a Super 7 Ultimates Bootsy Collins figure. And that packaging, ridiculous. In all seriousness, the fact that Super 7 gave us a Cliff Burton figure, a Lemmy figure, and now Bootsy Collins, this basis is sensing a beautiful pattern. I appreciate the respect for the low end. Now on to something a little bit different for me. Transformers! In my lifetime, I've maybe owned 3 Transformers toys, but I've got nothing but respect and love for these things. And believe it or not, this toy is based on an upcoming Transformers movie, which up until Bumblebee, I haven't loved a whole lot. But here we have Scourge coming from Transformers Rise of the Beasts, and the design of this thing is totally up my alley. He's some kind of eagle, maybe owl god? Forgive my ignorance, Transformers people, but of course he's more than meets the eye, and if you take a look at that vehicle form, that's straight out of Mad Max post-apocalyptic goodness right there. And then in its full-on Transformer mode, that thing looks gorgeous. It's hitting the steampunk fantasy vibe that I'm really feeling. Anyone out there remember the Highwayman TV show? Moving on, let's talk something that's a little bit more in my wheelhouse, Masterverse. If you've been following the channel, you know that I collect Masterverse. However, I do have some issues with some of the head sculpts that Mattel's been giving us, and I've been known to replace those with custom heads. This motion picture He-Man, clearly meant to be based on Dolph Lundgren, has gotten a lot of attention. First, we have a picture from a Target in my area. Take a look at that price point, folks. $40.49 for this. If you're paying that much, you better be getting a figure that you really like. He's supposed to be this guy, Dolph Lundgren in his prime. I saw this movie in the 80s, and the one thing that I definitely loved was the overall look of this guy. He totally was channeling sword and sorcery, and here you see the sort of concept art. This one drawn by Mobius. I remember seeing this back in the day in a Comic Scene magazine. I show this to you because this is what they're going for. But this is what comes in the box. At this point, we really don't know what the issues were with this head. And again, no one sets off to do anything that people don't like. So full on respect to the people who sculpted these heads. I can't do it. So I want to acknowledge their hard work, their labor, and they churned out something pretty cool. However, for my money, I can't use these heads to represent the character that's up in the top right corner. I just can't. Some folks really like this sort of vintage alt head, but let me show you what other talented folks in the community are doing and offering so that you can actually replace this with something maybe that's more to your liking. Let's start off with my favorite customizer. I've been supporting Jose Luis Morea the second I saw his work for Masterverse. He's Hordak MX on Instagram, and I have a couple of his pieces. Just take a look at my Instagram or older videos here on Brick Something, and you'll see a He-Man figure, a King Grayskull figure, a Man-at-Arms figure, and more that I decided I needed a Hordak MX head to replace the original Mattel ones. Take a look at what he's doing for this figure. As you'll see here, this is actually placed on the Classics figure done by Super 7. All of his stuff is done in resin, fully hand sculpted, hand painted, old school, but done so well. I love the way these things fit on the characters. I can't recommend his work enough. I mean, look at this. You see sort of like alternate paint ways he's got going on here. This one right here is on a Masterverse figure. It's on the new Eternia He-Man. Looks like he's done some really great customizing here of that armor. Gorgeous. And again, here it is, I think on the Classics body. Yep, on the Classics figure. Really good likeness, really great paint job. I will tell you his stuff is a little bit on the pricey side. You might end up paying nearly as much for the heads as you do for the figures, but you're definitely paying for quality. Jose Luis Morea is an artist straight up. And down here, you'll sort of see his process. That's the head in progress. And if you're one of those folks who's pointing out that there's the vintage looking head in that motion picture He-Man Masterverse figure, let me show you this. Check out Jose Luis's take on a vintage head. That thing's awesome. I'd actually argue that this is the best vintage looking He-Man head that I've ever seen. And if you're not convinced by those, he's got a bunch of others. Here's the one that he did for the Battle Armor He-Man with a bearded look. And this one's closer to the Revelation one. I believe that one's been sculpted a couple of different times. I got one that looks slightly different. And again, you can check that out on my Instagram or on other videos here on Brick Something. Let's take a look at another talented customizer on Instagram. This is Mega Custom X, also known as Bujubu on Instagram. I actually don't have any of his heads, and I was planning an order a while back and just kind of never circled back. But I definitely think this guy's work is amazing. Not just the He-Man stuff. Please check out his Instagram because they've got all sorts of stuff going on there, including tributes to Castlevania, this character that is totally like a Masters of the Universe mashed up with Grandizer, and some of the best Conan and Black Star customs I've seen. But let's talk motion picture He-Man. Take a look at this. I think that's an amazing Dolph Lundgren head. Definitely a different take, a little bit more maybe on the sort of like illustrator-y animated vibe, right? And here it is on an Origins buck. I think that looks pretty damn good, especially when you compare it to the Mattel one. Again, your mileage may vary. You may be really into the heads that came with that figure. Go for it. Not trying to yuck your yum. But hey, if you're looking for alternatives, check it out. On the bottom here, you see what he's done for that snake armor He-Man. Again, a different look. I love this hair. And these are Mega Custom X's take on a vintage He-Man. I'm just blown away by the talent that's out there, as well as the availability of this stuff now. The prices are kind of high because these are fully custom. I believe they're made out of resin, hand painted. And Mega Custom X is doing really short runs of these. Hit him up on his Instagram if you're interested. But let's move on to our third last option that I'm going to show you. Let's check out Ramen Toys offering. So in the premiere issue of Brick Something News, I highlighted Ramen Toys' work. And I fully appreciate that Ace and Ramen Toys saw that motion picture He-Man and thought they could do something better. And unlike the previous two options, these are not custom in the sense that they're not hand done in resin or 3D printing. This is going to be a production level toy. It's going to be of the same quality that you're going to get action figures in, fully painted. And you actually have three options. So they're actually calling this offering the Master of the Verse headset. You have a choice. You have verse 1, verse 2, and verse 3. The details are here, and you can kind of see what I think are renders of what the paint is going to look like. Slight variations. Each one of these is going to cost you $15.90, or you can get the whole set of 3 for $33. Keep checking back ramentoy.com. And on this side, you can see the heads on Masterverse and Motu Classics figures. All in all, some pretty cool options to replace the heads that I personally was not super crazy about. And I'm pretty sure I'm not alone based on the coverage that's been out there. I've said it before, it's a great time to be a toy collector, and there's all sorts of talented folks, customizers, indie toy makers that are really stepping up to give us the kinds of things that we want. So if you'd like to continue to see this kind of stuff, consider supporting them. But with that, let's move on. How about we talk about one of the big companies like Hasbro. As you likely know, Dungeons & Dragons is officially a Hasbro product, and they're really trying to make a big D&D push. Last time I highlighted the animated action figure line. This time I want to shift over to the Honor Among Thieves movie that's coming out and the toys that Hasbro's making for that. If you know my tastes, I'm super into creatures. And so when I saw that Hasbro was making a big dragon, super excited. Although it was kind of weird trying to find information on this. I know that it's in the wild. I've seen people picking it up. I should have said this earlier, but if you take a look at the description for this video, you'll see a link to a document where I've linked all this stuff to make it super easy for you to follow along. Please check that out. But I say that because I actually had a hard time finding information on this Raycor figure, and I've actually only found 2 review videos so far. Spoiler alert, I'll tell you right now that based on what I'm seeing, this might not be something that I get. I was excited to think that there's a dragon coming, but the quality doesn't seem to be there yet. I even tried to look for places where you can actually buy it. If you do a search right now for Dungeons & Dragons Raycor, you get a bunch of eBay listings, a Mercari listing, and this is one of them. It's selling for about $70 on eBay. Again, I'm just not seeing the value there, but the sculpt itself seems pretty cool, and I really appreciate the back of the packaging where they're going old school with a picture of an actual kid playing with this thing. You can see from the dimensions, it's like 20 inches wide with the wings fully spread, 11 inches tall. Super exciting in theory. It's got fairly limited articulation, and the body just seems a little thin to me based on the reviews. But again, if you check out that document that's in the description of this video, you'll find a link to a video review by the Super Awesome Geek Show. Definitely check it out for yourself. So if you can't tell, I was a little disappointed by this dragon, but that's okay because there's some really cool dragons right around the corner. By Creative Beast Studios, the folks who give us Beasts of the Mesozoic, those really cool, scientifically accurate dinosaur toys. They're going straight up Dino Rider style with a line called Cyberzoic, where they're going to mix dinosaurs and space tech, mecha tech, etc. I'm not fully sure about how dragons fit into this, but apparently they're doing this Arctic dragon. If you take a look at this image, man, this thing is going to be amazing. I've been looking at images of this thing for like months now, and I keep tripping out on the detail. Take a look at the sculpt work in this thing. I'm sorry, but this thing makes that Raycor look really basic. And you can kind of tell that there's going to be some really cool articulation points going on. Again, if you're familiar with Creative Beast Studio and their Beasts of the Mesozoic line, you know that as far as articulation goes, these things are going to be on point. Kuraokami Arctic Dragon from Cyberzoic. And as you can see from the header here, they're going to do a Kickstarter to launch this Cyberzoic line that's coming on October 3rd of this year. So in addition to the Arctic dragon, it looks like dragons are going to be a part of this line. I believe this is called their lizard dragon, and they posted some renders from the sculpting program. Take a look at this thing. Again, highly detailed, and you can kind of see the articulation points there in the neck and in the arms. Looks like even the wings, as it's sort of connected to the side, are going to have some movement. But dragons aren't going to be the only thing this line has to offer, because Cyberzoic looks, like I said, straight up Dino Riders, putting on this kind of like technological armor on dinosaurs. To me, this figure underneath looks like one of their Beasts of the Mesozoic raptors, maybe. You can see the concept art is totally channeling that tech meets dinosaur vibe. Check this out. They've got some really talented concept artists and designers working on this thing. If you take a look at this right here, you'll notice that the armor on that dino is actually transforming into a ship. And then last but not least, I want to highlight this Smilodon because apparently Creative Beast Studio is also doing a new line called Beasts of the Cenozoic to highlight the fauna from that era of Earth's lifetime. Right on, Creative Beast Studio. Again, there's a bunch of links to this stuff that you can find accessible in the description of this video. So let's keep it moving. How about we talk some Manglors? Because Nate Bartsch, artist extraordinaire who's done stuff for Masters of the Universe, Mythic Legions, Cosmic Legions, and on and on and on, has apparently been pretty busy working on some Manglors art. Manglors was a vintage line that I wasn't into, but I remember them. You can kind of see them down here. They were made of this like clay, almost slime-like material. Apparently they didn't work out so well, and a lot of kids would take them apart and forget to put them back right away, and they just wouldn't hold together. But in the 21st century, we've got awesome toy lines like Glyos. If you're not familiar with the Glyos system, you can see it sort of here. You can see these points around the waist and the arms. Glyos is a system where you can pull parts apart and put them back together. A basic peg and hole kind of system. You can mix and match parts. And apparently they've decided to do a new Manglors line. I'm not sure what's still in stock, but when Nate posted this stuff, he was saying you can grab it at toyfinity.store. And here it is. Again, you'll be able to find that link in the doc that's in the video description. So I'm not totally sure to what extent Nate did artwork on this. Maybe it's limited to these kinds of illustrations, but I gotta say the new revised logo is very cool. Clearly these characters are just super cool with their sort of like biotech thing going on. Absolutely love them. Not my thing personally because of the scale, but they look amazing. Now on to something that I know I'm definitely going to be picking up. It's the Savage Crucible line. If you're a fan of Mythic Legions, you've probably heard people talking about Savage Crucible. It's the same scale as Mythic Legions, Masterverse, Animal Warriors of the Kingdom, which means it's going to work really well on my shelf. The big news is that in 5 days from when I'm recording this, their Kickstarter launches. That's right. February 10th, the first wave of figures is going to be available on their Kickstarter. Just take a look at these images. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about what you're seeing. There's a lot of great info in the Savage Crucible Facebook group that I've linked in the description below. Again, look for that bit.ly link. But what I will point out here is what's going on with the articulation. These are poses that you can't get with other comparable lines. And I'm usually not a big articulation guy, but then once you see what's possible, it's hard to ignore. Just a simple pose of being able to two-hand a sword, so good. And they know it, which is why they seem to be putting every single figure in that kind of pose, including this guy who's got a crossbow and can properly hold it. Rad. This breaks down the waves that are going to be coming out. You'll see wave 1 is going to be these figures, mostly what they're calling Lemurians or Lemurians, but they're basically lizard people, which I'll show you a little bit more of. Wave 2 is going to have humans, and then wave 3 looks like it's going to be more on the fish people. It's pretty cool considering we don't have lizard people in, say, Mythic Legions, and fish people aren't a thing unless you're thinking merman. And before I get too far with fish people, just want to point out that wave 4 is here, and you can tell by the artwork that we might be getting some goat folks. But yeah, let's talk fish people. Oh, look at this thing. I believe this is a Paint Master. Check out all the armor, the overall silhouette of the body. I can't wait for these figures to come out. And again, if you take a look at those links to that Facebook group, you'll see that they're talking about how you can remove all of this armor and it's all interchangeable. You can actually mix parts like forearms and shoulders and legs. So you can do like a fish man hand with a human arm and a lizard person shoulder, etc. Take a look at this sort of lizard person. This is one of the Lemurians, I believe, in full-on armor. And I really appreciate the colorway they're going for. Very bright and toyetic. Here's the Lemurian without all the armor. You can check out all the detail and the sculpt of the scales, etc. And then if you want to see what this looks like with the armor, one really cool feature that I'll highlight of this line is that they're offering what they're calling slate characters, essentially blank slate, a playing figure specifically offered for designers and customizers to go to town and kind of create the ultimate figure that they want. I feel like that's a game changer, especially if you understand the play patterns for a lot of the fans that are hungering for this kind of figure. Mythic Legions folks are all about customizing, and I think they're going to jump right on this line. So February 10th, it's coming out. Check out that Kickstarter when it comes out. I know they're saying there's 4 waves, but the reality is if wave 1 doesn't hit, there won't be a wave 2. Man, this toy habit's getting expensive, and I've got some things I need to figure out. However, I'm definitely going to be picking up a couple of these Savage Crucible figures, and I really want to see where this line goes. So please consider supporting yet another cool indie toy maker that's given us something that's just different and awesome. Oh, I actually have one more shot of another Lemurian. You can kind of see the different styles they've got going on. Again, look at that paint job. Based on some of the things that are being shared in the Facebook group, these sorts of figures are basically going to run about $35 to $40. They're going to have army builders that are actually going to be cheaper, around 25 bucks. So definitely check it out. Whew, there's a lot of stuff. That's what's up. So let's just keep going. How about D20? The makers of one of my favorite toys of this year, that boar that I reviewed on the channel. And of course, the wolf from last year that was one of my absolute top 5 figures of the year. They were supposed to be getting out this soldier figure, but I guess it's delayed a little bit and it's going to be coming out, they're saying, in February. But what was especially important about this post that I'm showing you right now is that they teased a horse. And based on D20's wolf and boar, I'm sure this horse is going to be gorgeous. I don't know yet how I feel about the tail. That's just me. I've got a couple of great Mythic Legions horses, and I think for my collection, this may be the first D20 animal that I pass on. But hey, D20, if you want to prove me wrong, send me a copy and I'd love to review it. Hint, hint, wink, wink. How about we take a look at another indie toy line that's going to be coming out soon, and that's Armies of Ashmore, which apparently are based on a comic book called the Defenders of Eden, I believe. Yeah, Defenders of Eden, Armies of Ashmore. There's been a lot of great info out there already about these from PowerCon and LegionsCon last year. I absolutely love how they've translated the figures from these illustrations to these 3D sculpts of action figures. Surprise, surprise, but it's because these were actually sculpted by the 4 Horsemen. Yes, the 4 Horsemen of Mythic Legion's fame, Motu Classics, etc. So you know these are going to be really, really great. It's going to be an expensive next couple of years for toys. But the reason I'm talking about them is because I recently saw these awesome little videos showing the paint masters posted by Toy Huntress on Instagram. You definitely have to click through on that bit.ly document in the description of this video. That's going to get you right to this post. You have to see what's going on with these figures. Once again, I love that they totally went toy with these and made them nice and bright, but the sculpts are super detailed and they just look really good. Check out the Armies of Ashmore. Speaking of awesome social media posts about toys, Dan Larson of Toy Galaxy had to highlight the Eagle Force, the hidden character, on his Instagram. And of course, it's Dan, so he comes correct with a little bit of the history, showing us pictures that highlight what this figure is meant to be an homage of. So first off, I got to acknowledge that Eagle Force was a vintage line in and of itself. I remember my brother and I getting a bunch of these. I think they were like 2 inches or 3 inch tall, fully die-cast figures, mostly of soldiers in gold beret and military uniforms. And I think there was an awesome ninja in there somewhere along the line. But Fresh Monkey Fiction brought these back a little bit ago in 4-inch form, and for whatever reason, they decided to create a character called the Hidden, a sentient automaton. If you're a toy fan who was around during the 70s or early 80s, would probably know that this is a straight up homage to the Micronauts. But if you've got the brain of Dan Larson, you also know that the Micronauts actually came from a Japanese toy line called Microman. And Microman was also connected to another toy line called Diaclone in Japan, the predecessor of the Transformers, which is why Dan posed the hidden character with this awesome Microman transforming cassette. Because in the Microman lore, these are tiny characters that live in our world. So you'll see him here with a cassette that actually transforms in a cool little helicopter. Oh, so good. And then Mego licensed these toys and released them as Microman here in the United States. Similarly, there was Diaclone that eventually was licensed by Hasbro to become the Transformers. Check out Toy Galaxy's Instagram. Again, the link is in that bit.ly document down in the video description. Ooh, that was a lot of that's what's up for this episode. So let's close off today's episode by looking at some custom toys, starting with the work of Warren Goodwin, a good friend of mine who I hope to have on the channel very soon. You may know him as the person running the Masterversal-toyhunter channel who goes by Eldor, one of my awesome co-hosts from the Legions class over on Ostradamus Toys. If you haven't checked that out yet and you're curious about what Mythic Legions are all about, definitely look into Legions class. I'll put that link in that document below. Today, I just want to highlight this awesome custom version of Thor and Oakenshield. Check out what Eldor did. This is the original figure here. Decent sculpt, awesome for its time. But Eldor was like, nah, I think we can plus it a little. And you can just see with some paint, some talent, some love, he really took this character and came up with a custom figure that definitely does the actor and character justice. God, it's just amazing how much more detail gets brought out from just a little bit of paint. I mean, the sculpt is all there, but what Eldor/Warren did with this is absolutely amazing. Again, I hope to have him come onto the channel and talk a little bit more about his custom work really soon. Oh man, we're running a little long today, so let me go ahead and close off this episode by taking a look at one more customizer. Someone who's apparently been doing this for a while, but honestly, I'm new to their work. I'm talking about RB Customs. Man, I just saw this Wonder Twins Jaina figure recently, and it totally sent me down the rabbit hole of looking at all of RB Customs Superpowers work. Shout out to the Toy Amigos for bringing up this talented customizer not too long ago. That's actually how I found out about RB Customs. These are definitely the Superpowers figures that I was hoping would come out when McFarlane got the license. Not trying to hate on McFarlane's work, so instead let's focus on the awesome work that RB Customs is doing with the original Kenner figures. Take a look at what's happening here. On the right is the original Kenner Wonder Woman figure that I had, and on the left is what RB Customs did with that same figure, transforming it into Jaina of the Wonder Twins. It's perfect. And this isn't a one-off, because if you take a look at the rest of his work, check out that document that I've linked in the description. It'll take you right to RB Customs, and you can see this stuff for yourself. You can see how RB Customs has taken other Kenner vintage figures and fully transformed them into new DC figures. Just take a look at the way the faces are. RB Customs has totally studied the aesthetic of these original Kenner figures and hit it perfectly. Man, these are the DC figures that I would have loved. Can you imagine having a Black Canary and Zatanna as a kid? And what if we actually got a Nightwing? And this Batman channels that old school Batman look. I love how the cape sort of follows the line of the cowl. We've got some villains. Your vintage Lex Luthor, Brainiac, Black Adam. How about Soups? Again, doing this really cool thing with the cape almost tucked into the uniform. And you can't have Soups without a Bizarro. Please click that bit.ly document that I've listed in the video description, because you gotta see what RB Customs has on their Instagram. I'm just gonna tease you with this group shot of both the heroes and the villains. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close off this episode of Needless Ephemera We Saw. Again, if you found something interesting today and you wanna learn more about it, you gotta check out the video description where I put a bit.ly link to a document that has links to every single thing we talked about. And that's gonna be the same for all of the news episodes that I do. I'll always be dropping these as live premieres so we can chat along as we watch. But if you're catching this on the replay, leave a comment and let me know what interested you. Or tell me if there's something else you want me to check out. I'm still trying to figure out a schedule for this, but I thank you for your patience. I can't express how much I appreciate you just coming through and checking out my channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Until next time, folks. If you're enjoying the channel, consider liking and subscribing the video. It definitely helps out, and I'm trying to grow this thing. And if you're looking for even more of a toy fix right now, see the link to the left to follow a fellow member of the Legion of Lesser Toy Tubers. And until next time, peace and power.